You're listening to the Bots and Bosses podcast, the only show where robots and humans attempt to work side by side. Presented by John Binks, technologist, author, and your AI ringling tour guide. So, buckle up and let's deep dive.
Okay, let's think for a second. Where does the internet actually live? I mean, when you stream your favorite show or, scroll through endless social media feeds or even just do a simple bank transaction online, where are those bits and bytes physically sitting?
Right. It feels like it's just out there in the cloud, doesn't it?
Exactly. Like it's just everywhere and nowhere.
Well, the surprising truth is a huge chunk of the internet's physical infrastructure is concentrated in one maybe unexpected place, Loudoun County, Virginia.
Loudoun County. Okay. I've heard the nickname Data Center Alley.
That's the one. And yeah, from the outside, it might just look like rows of these massive kind of bland, boxy buildings with high fences. But inside, that's where the magic happens. It has the highest concentration of data centers anywhere in the world.
So these aren't just storage lockers. They're the actual physical heart of the cloud.
Precisely. Think humming warehouses, climate controlled, packed floor to ceiling with servers. These are the machines processing your searches, storing your photos, running the apps. It's really quite amazing how this once mostly rural county just outside D.C. became, well, the capital of the cloud, the nerve center for so much of our digital world.
And that's exactly what we want to dig into in this deep dive. We're going to unpack how Loudoun transformed, peek inside these facilities, figuratively speaking, and look at the huge economic boom, but also, importantly, the environmental and community challenges that come with basically hosting the internet. We're drawing on a detailed report looking at this whole ecosystem.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story.
And just to set the scene, get this, some estimates, and these numbers are kind of wild, suggest maybe up to 70% of the entire world's internet traffic flows through Northern Virginia at some point.
70%. It's almost hard to grasp.
Right. If the internet had a main highway, like a Route 66, it would definitely run straight through Loudoun County. Okay, let's unpack this. So how did this happen? How did this, relatively quiet corner of Virginia become the place for data centers? Was it just luck?
Not really luck, no. It was more like a perfect storm, a combination of factors that just lined up perfectly. Location was absolutely key.
Proximity to D.C., I imagine.
Exactly. Close to Washington, D.C., so you've got major government agencies, big corporate clients nearby. But it was still far enough out that land was, initially at least, much more affordable than closer in.
Okay.
And the internet's roots are actually kind of nearby. The Pentagon's ARPANET project, the precursor to the internet, that started just down the road in Arlington back in the late 60s.
Ah, so there was an early tech connection.
Definitely. Then, fast forward to the 90s, you had pioneers like America Online, AOL, and a big network company called UNET setting up headquarters right there in Ashburn in Loudoun County. And they brought MAE East with them.
MAE East. That rings a bell.
Oh, yeah.
That was one of the original big internet connection points, right?
One of the very first major internet exchange points, where different internet providers physically connected their networks together. So this early flood of fiber optic cable laid down decades ago literally wired Loudoun for success before most people even had an email address.
Wow. So the groundwork was laid super early. But it's not just about local connections, is it? It has to reach the whole world.
Absolutely critical. Being in Northern Virginia gives you fantastic connectivity up and down the East Coast, obviously, but also across the Atlantic.
Undersea cables.
Bingo. Major undersea internet cables land down at Virginia Beach. Think of that things like the Marié cable coming all the way from Spain. That data gets beamed straight up to Loudoun's networks.
Well, those cables carry a lot of data.
Oh, yeah. Marié alone can handle something like 160 terabits per second. That's, well, it's enough for an unbelievable amount of cat videos, let's put it that way. Or 4K streaming, whatever you prefer.
Right.
So this global reach means data centers in Loudoun are just milliseconds away in terms of data travel time from major hubs like New York, London, even Sao Paulo. It makes it the perfect interchange point for global internet traffic, a real digital crossroads.
Okay, so you've got the location, the early fiber, the global links. What else does a data center need to really thrive? It can't just be about the internet pipes.
You're absolutely right. Two huge things, land and lots of it, and incredibly reliable power. Lots and lots of power.
And Ashburn had that.
Back then, yes. It was mostly open land. Famous for horse farms, actually. You could say it's known for server farms. Plus, the region is pretty stable geographically. Very few major natural disasters like earthquakes or hurricanes compared to other areas. That's a big deal for critical infrastructure.
And the power.
Power comes mainly from Dominion Energy. They have a reputation for being very reliable and, importantly, offering relatively cheap electricity, something like 28% below the U.S. average, which is a massive factor when your buildings consume electricity like these do.
28% cheaper. That's significant savings.
Huge savings. And Dominion also made commitments to renewables early on. Plus, you add in good transport links, major highways, Dult Airport right there.
Yeah.
It just made it a very convenient and safe place to build these things.
But here's where it gets really interesting, right? The government side of things, the policies.
Oh, absolutely. This was a crucial piece. Virginia was one of the very first states to basically roll out the red carpet. They offered incredibly generous sales and used tax exemptions specifically for data center equipment. Meaning companies buying all that super expensive gear servers, massive generators for backup power, complex cooling systems. They didn't have to pay the state sales tax on it. That could save them around 6% on multi-million-dollar purchases. A huge incentive.
6% on potentially billions in equipment. Yeah, I can see why that would attract companies.
And Loudoun County itself jumped right in. They actively courted the industry. They created fast-track permitting programs to speed up approvals. And for a long time, data centers were a by right use in many areas.
By right, like automatic approval almost.
Pretty much. If the zoning allowed it, you could build almost like putting up a pre-approved shed, just, a giant multi-story high-tech shed. It made the whole process incredibly smooth and predictable for developers.
And the result was?
A flood of investment, just constant construction. Local officials used to boast that for something like 14 years straight, not a single day went by without some data center construction happening in the county.
Wow.
And this massive growth really diversified Loudoun's tax base away from just residential property taxes, which actually helped keep those taxes lower for homeowners for quite a while.
So, summing it up, perfect location near DC, fiber laid down early, cheap, reliable power, plenty of land, stable environment, and governments practically begging them to come build.
That's pretty much the recipe. It really was the perfect cloud formation, you could say.
Okay, so we know why Loudoun became Data Center Alley. Now let's peek behind those often windowless walls. What is actually humming away inside these tens of millions of square feet of buildings?
Right, it's easy to just see the buildings. But inside, it's basically, almost everything you do online. And a lot you probably don't even think about.
Like what? Give us the breakdown.
Okay, first, you've got your everyday internet services. Think search engines. Google has a big presence. Social media, Meta, Facebook, Instagram, streaming platforms like Netflix or Disney Plus Day, online shopping, cloud backups for your phone or computer. When you refresh Instagram or binge that new show, odds are very high. Those digital bits are flowing through an Ashburn data center.
So the fun stuff.
The fun stuff, yeah, but also the critical stuff. Then there's financial and enterprise data. Banks, financial institutions, they need those super fast, low latency connections for high frequency trading, processing transactions. A lot of big companies rent space here, what we call colocation, to run their internal software, their SaaS platforms for their East Coast operations. It's not all cat videos. A lot of it is, frankly, kind of boring business data, payroll systems, HR databases, logistics, but it's essential.
And it goes beyond business too, right? Personal data.
Absolutely. Think about health and personal data. Things like storing medical images, like X-rays or MRIs, running electronic health record systems, even processing genomics data for research, your Fitbit stats syncing to the cloud, your telehealth appointment, your online patient portal. There's a good chance that data touches a server rack in Loudoun.
Which means security must be absolutely paramount.
Oh, incredibly so. These places are like fortresses. Gated perimeters, multiple layers of security, biometric scanners, fingerprint, iris scan, sometimes 247 security guards, constant surveillance. They have to be secure to handle that kind of sensitive information.
And given the location near DC...
Right, that leads to the last major category. Government and classified projects. Federal agencies are huge customers, defense contractors too. Some facilities are specifically designed to handle classified or sensitive government data in super secure sections, sometimes called secure enclaves. You hear terms like GovCloud, which are specific cloud environments just for government use. There are even rumors the CIA's private cloud infrastructure is hosted somewhere in the area.
So highly secure, cleared personnel only, extra layers of protocols.
Exactly. These aren't places you can just wander into. They're built for serious security, often operating completely under the radar.
So the range is just mind-boggling from, TikTok videos and online games 1 minute.
To national security intelligence or complex climate modeling data the next, often in the same building complex, just different halls or cages. If data really is the new oil, then Loudoun County is arguably the world's biggest, most diverse digital refinery. And the sheer scale is just hard to comprehend sometimes. As of, say, early 2025, Loudoun County alone had around 199 data centers up and running.
199.
Operational, with another 117 either approved or actually under construction, so in the pipeline. And if you look at Northern Virginia as a whole, with Loudoun as the core, you're talking nearly 300 data centers. It is by far the largest single data center market on the planet.
Bigger than Silicon Valley or Dallas.
Oh, much bigger. More capacity here than the next several largest U.S. markets combined. It's really in a league of its own. Locals sometimes joke about them looking like alien warehouses that landed overnight, or these giant concrete castles.
How much space are we talking?
In Loudoun alone, it's over 30 million square feet of operational data center space. Try to picture that. It's like 525 football fields, just filled with servers.
525 football fields. Okay, that's vast.
And if you count the entire campuses, not just the building footprints, some estimates say the total area involved is like 100,000 football fields. It's a sprawling digital city, really, just hiding in plain sight behind those fences.
And all those servers, they must just drink electricity. We touched on power earlier, but what does that demand actually look like now?
It's staggering. Data centers now consume something like 20%, 1/5 of all the electricity generated in Virginia.
20%. Wow.
Yeah. And it's growing incredibly fast. In just a few years recently, Dominion Energy connected about 70 new data centers. That surge alone added demand equivalent to powering roughly 600 to 50,000 homes.
Just the new connection.
Just the new ones. And get this, the amount of power Dominion has contracted to deliver to data centers in the near future. It nearly doubled in just the second half of 2024. It went from about 21 gigawatts to potentially around 40 gigawatts by the end of the year.
40 gigawatts. So what does that even mean in real terms?
40 gigawatts could theoretically power something like 30 million average American homes. It's an almost unbelievable amount of electricity demand concentrated in one region.
So Dominion must be scrambling.
Completely. They're investing billions to build new high-voltage transmission lines, new substations, just trying to keep the lights on, literally. Without massive ongoing upgrades, even Data Center Alley could hit a power availability wall. It's a real constraint.
Okay, but that massive growth, that huge demand, it must be an incredible economic engine for Loudoun County, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's been a massive economic boon. All those buildings and all that equipment represent billions in taxable property value. In 2024 alone, data centers added something like $16 billion in new assessed value to the county's tax rolls.
$16 billion in 1 year.
Yeah, bringing the total assessed value of data center property to over $41 billion. And here's the kicker. Data centers now generate almost half of all local property tax revenue in Loudoun County.
Half from one industry.
Half. Enough revenue, reportedly, to cover the entire county operating budget, schools, police, fire, parks, everything. The county did a study showing that for every $1 in county services a data center uses, like roads, maybe some water sewer, it pays back about $26 in taxes.
26 to 1. That sounds almost too good to be true.
It's an incredibly efficient tax generator for the local government. And that revenue stream is a big reason why Loudoun was able to keep residential property taxes relatively low for many years compared to neighboring counties. They really are cash cows, quietly funding a lot of public services.
That's a compelling argument for welcoming them. But does relying so heavily on one industry, even a super profitable one, create any potential downsides or risks for the county long term?
That's a really important question, and one the county is probably thinking about more now. I mean, diversification is generally seen as a good thing for local economies. What happens if tech trends shift or companies consolidate? It's a consideration. On the jobs front, while one single data center building might only have, say, 30 to 50 full-time employees once it's running technicians, security, facilities folks, the whole ecosystem supports a lot more.
Right, the construction, the support services.
Exactly. Estimates suggest the data center ecosystem supports around 12,000 direct local jobs in Loudoun and tens of thousands more indirectly through construction booms, electricians, HVAC specialists, catering, security firms, landscaping. The list goes on. And many are well-paying technical jobs, so it does support a significant number of livelihoods. but, that reliance is still there.
And we saw this shift recently, right? By late 2024, you mentioned Loudoun officials started, quote, tapping the brakes. Why the change of heart after years of full speed ahead growth?
Yeah, the sentiment started to shift. With nearly 200 of these massive facilities already operating and more planned, residents started raising more concerns, primarily about new centers being built too close to residential neighborhoods, schools, or scenic areas. The cumulative impact was becoming more visible.
Noise, traffic, just the visual impact.
All of the above. So in March 2025, the County Board of Supervisors made a significant change. They voted to end that by right development for data centers in most areas. Now, new projects generally have to apply for a special exception permit and meet much stricter standards regarding location, noise, design, environmental impact.
So more scrutiny, more public input needed now.
Exactly. It gives the county and the community more control over where and how future data centers get built. It's a move away from just maximizing tax revenue towards balancing that with community quality of life. As one local official put it, nobody else on earth really has this specific challenge, managing such an intense concentration of data centers. It's a good problem economically, maybe, but it forces a shift towards more managed, sustainable growth.
Okay, so Loud is definitely reaping the economic benefits, the jobs, the tax revenue. But as you said, there's always another side to the coin. All those servers, all that power, all that cooling. It has real-world physical consequences, right? The cloud isn't quite as ethereal as it sounds.
Not at all. It has a very real, very large physical footprint. And the electricity demand is probably the biggest challenge right now.
Yeah.
I mentioned 20% of Virginia's power.
Yeah, that's still shocking.
And the grid is straining. Back in 2022, Dominion Energy actually warned they couldn't guarantee connections for some new data center projects immediately because their transmission infrastructure in parts of Loudoun just couldn't handle the load. They had to temporarily pause new hookups.
A pause. In Data Center Alley, that must have sent shockwaves through the industry.
It definitely got everyone's attention. It highlighted how the demand growth had outpaced the infrastructure build-out. Dominion is now investing billions, like we said, planning major new high-voltage lines, like 500 kilovolt lines, just to bring more power into eastern Loudoun, potentially another 6 gigawatts just for that area.
But projections still show demand doubling in maybe 10 years.
Some independent studies suggest that, primarily driven by data centers and electrification. Building enough generation, let alone clean generation, to meet that. It's been called a Herculean task. Things got so tight at one point that regulators briefly floated the idea of letting data centers run their backup diesel generators more often, even during peak demand times, to ease grid stress.
Diesel generators, that sounds like a step backwards for air quality.
Exactly. There was immediate public outcry, and the idea was quickly dropped. But it shows the pressure the system is under.
Okay, but the big tech companies, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, they all have these big climate pledges, right? 100% renewable energy goals. How does that square with this massive power draw?
That's a huge focus for them and for the industry. They know their carbon footprint is enormous, and they face pressure from investors, customers, and the public. So, yes, they've all pledged to eventually power their operations with 100% renewable energy.
But you can't just put solar panels on the roof of a data center and call it a day, right? It wouldn't even come close.
Not even remotely close.
Yeah.
So their strategy involves a few things. One is investing heavily in off-site renewable energy projects, large solar farms, wind farms, often in other parts of Virginia or even other states. They sign long-term contracts called power purchase agreements or PPAs to buy the clean energy generated by those projects.
So they're essentially funding new renewable projects elsewhere to match their consumption here.
That's the idea. They also buy renewable energy credits, or RECs, which represent the environmental attributes of clean power generated somewhere. Virginia itself is building more renewables. There are large solar projects coming online, and a big 2.6 gigawatt offshore wind farm is planned off the coast by 2026. Dominion's own long-term plan aims for about 80% of its new generating capacity to be carbon-free.
So progress is being made, but it's a race against that skyrocketing demand.
It absolutely is. And the county is looking at its own rules now, too, potentially requiring new data centers to incorporate some on-site renewables like solar canopies over parking lots or meet higher energy efficiency standards. There's even talk down the line about things like small modular nuclear reactors, SMRs, potentially being part of the long-term solution for clean, reliable power for these centers.
Yeah, SMRs. Wow. Okay. That's a whole other conversation. But it's not just energy, is it? All those servers generate a ton of heat. How do they keep them cool?
Yeah, cooling is the other massive resource consumer. Think about how hot your own laptop gets. Now multiply that by hundreds of thousands of servers packed together. It's an immense amount of heat.
So giant air conditioners.
Essentially, yes. But on an industrial scale, most large data centers use systems with chillers and cooling towers. And those cooling towers work by evaporating water, lots and lots of water. A single large data center campus can consume millions of gallons of water per day, just through evaporation for cooling.
Millions of gallons a day. Where does that water come from?
That's the crucial question. Initially, much of it came from the municipal drinking water supply. One analysis showed data centers in Loudoun increased their use of potable water by something like 250% in just a few years.
That seems unsustainable, especially if there's a drought.
Exactly. Virginia had drought conditions in 2023, and drawing that much fresh water puts a strain on resources. So there's been a big push towards using reclaimed water, basically, treated wastewater for cooling instead. Loudoun County has built out a purple pipe system to deliver reclaimed water to many data center areas.
Purple pipes for recycled water.
It helps a lot, but the demand is so high it's often outpacing the supply of reclaimed water, especially as new centers come online. So some still rely on municipal water, at least partially. Environmental groups flag this as a major concern. Data centers are actually one of the top 10 water-consuming industries nationally.
Are there alternatives? Better cooling tech?
The industry is definitely exploring things like liquid cooling, where liquids circulate directly over the hot components, which can be much more efficient than air cooling and use less water overall. But right now, water-based cooling is still dominant. These thirsty data centers remain a significant environmental challenge.
Okay, energy and water. Massive impacts. What about the more immediate neighborhood level issues like noise and just what these places look like?
Yeah, those are very real concerns for people living nearby. The noise is a big one. You have the constant hum from the huge HVAC fans needed for cooling, 247. And then you have the backup diesel generators.
Which they test regularly.
Exactly. They usually run them for maintenance checks, maybe weekly or monthly. And of course, they roar to life during any power outage. That low-frequency drone can be really disruptive for neighbors. So the county now often requires noise studies and mitigation measures like building sound walls or limiting when generators can be tested, especially at night.
And aesthetics. Let's be honest, they're not always pretty buildings.
No. Historically, they were often just big, windowless concrete boxes surrounded by fences. Yeah. Purely functional. There has been a push recently from companies in the county to improve the design. You see more effort with landscaping, using varied materials or colors on the facades, trying to break up the massing, making them look less like stark industrial bunkers.
But still, a 500,000 square foot warehouse isn't exactly going to blend into a historic town.
Right. It's hard to hide something that big. Some residents definitely see them as eyesores, especially when they get built near residential areas or historic sites. The county's newer rules are trying to address this, steering them towards more industrial zones and requiring better visual screening, setbacks, and more thoughtful design.
It sounds like that classic NMBY not in my backyard situation. People want the services, maybe appreciate the lower taxes.
But they don't necessarily want to live next door to a giant humming generator testing facility. You even had one local official quoted saying something like, "Fine, I'll pay more taxes, just stop building them right next to me."
Mm-hmm.
It captures that tension perfectly.
So Loudoun really is this microcosm, this test case for how we balance the relentless growth of our digital world with, actual livable communities and environmental limits.
It absolutely is. And the solutions aren't simple. They involve massive investments in energy infrastructure, definitely a push for more renewables, smarter water management and recycling, and much more careful land use planning. What Loudoun figures out, or struggles with, will be watched closely by other burgeoning tech hubs around the world, because places like Singapore and Amsterdam are already hitting similar walls with land, power, and community acceptance. Loudoun's experience is becoming a really important model, for better or worse.
It's truly fascinating, and behind these massive buildings and complex issues are some of the biggest names in technology. Who exactly has set up shop in Data Center Alley?
Oh, it's basically a who's who of big tech and more. Probably the biggest player, historically and currently, is Amazon Web Services, AWS.
The cloud giant.
Yes, exactly. AWS actually launched its very first cloud region, the famous US East 1, right there in Northern Virginia. They have a massive footprint. Many of those sort of anonymous-looking white data center buildings you see scattered across Loud are packed with AWS servers, and they're not slowing down. Amazon announced a plan to invest another $35 billion with a B to expand their data centers in Virginia over the next decade or so.
$35 billion. Just Amazon. Okay. Who else?
Well, Microsoft is right there with them. Their Azure cloud platform is expanding rapidly. They have large campuses in Loudoun, too, racing to add capacity, especially for all the new AI services everyone's talking about. Microsoft also makes big public commitments on sustainability, aiming for 100% renewable energy and even to be carbon negative by 2030.
And Google, Meta.
Yep. Google has multiple large data centers in Northern Virginia as well. They announced a $1 billion expansion back in 2023. So yeah, your Google searches, your YouTube videos, very likely running through Loudoun infrastructure. And Meta, Facebook's parent company, has a significant presence too. They have a massive data center campus down in Henrico County, Virginia, but it's tightly integrated with the network ecosystem in Loudoun. So your Facebook feed, your Instagram stories, they're probably traversing Loudoun's fiber network.
So the hyperscalers, the giants, are all there in force.
Yeah.
What about other types of players?
A huge part of the market is actually run by colocation providers. Companies like Equinix, Digital Realty, Sirezone. Think of them as landlords for servers.
Hotels for servers, you called them earlier.
Exactly. They build a secure facility, provide the power, cooling, and network connections, and then they rent out space cages, suites, even whole floors to thousands of other companies. Equinix, for instance, runs some of the most important interconnection hubs in Ashburn. These are the modern versions of that original MA East, the places where hundreds of different networks physically plug into each other to exchange traffic. Digital Realty openly calls Ashburn the internet hub of the world.
So these colocation centers host a huge variety of customers.
Thousands. Financial firms doing trading, software companies, healthcare providers, universities, media companies, and of course, government contractors, which leads to the government and defense sector. As we mentioned, proximity to DC means numerous data centers cater specifically to U.S. federal agencies, some hosting those secure GovCloud regions. And there are highly secure facilities run by defense contractors or intelligence agencies themselves, the real Fort Knox of server stuff.
And it's not just traditional tech anymore, right? AI is changing things.
Absolutely. Virtually every sector is represented, but new technologies like artificial intelligence are driving even more demand. Training those huge AI models requires massive clusters of specialized servers, often GPUs, and companies want to deploy those clusters where the network connectivity is best, which brings them right back to Ashburn.
It really is this incredible concentration. It creates that network effect, doesn't it? Everyone wants to be there because everyone else is already there. The density of networks and services is just unmatched.
Precisely. That density creates a kind of digital gravity. It pulls in more networks, more services, more customers. It's estimated that at any given moment, something like a third, maybe more, of the world's total internet traffic is flowing through the networks concentrated in Northern Virginia. It's become this indispensable digital melting pot. So Northern Virginia, with Loudoun County right at its heart, clearly wears the crown. It's the undisputed heavyweight champ of the data center world. But how does it really compare when you look at other hubs, both in the U.S. and globally?
Right, let's get some perspective. Within the U.S., you have other significant markets, places like Silicon Valley in Northern California, Dallas-Fort Worth, Chicago, Atlanta. Phoenix is growing fast, the New York, New Jersey area.
All big markets in their own right.
Definitely. But when you look at sheer capacity, measured in power, usually megawatts or gigawatts, Northern Virginia is just on another level. We're talking multiple gigawatts of operational capacity here. The next largest U.S. markets are typically down in the low 1 to 2 gigawatt range, maybe.
So it really dwarfs them.
It's like comparing an entire professional sports league to maybe one division. A huge factor, as we discussed, was those early and very generous tax incentives in Virginia, especially that 6% sales tax exemption on equipment. Places like California have much higher operating costs, more regulations, which made it harder for them to compete on pure scale, even with Silicon Valley right there. Virginia just made it incredibly attractive financially to build big and build fast.
Okay, so dominant in the U.S. What about globally? We hear about hubs like Singapore, Amsterdam, London, Frankfurt, Dublin.
Yeah, those are definitely the key international peers. They act as major regional internet hubs for Asia, Europe, etc. But again, the scale comparison is striking.
How so?
Well, first, some of those hubs are facing similar challenges to Loudoun, maybe even hitting them earlier. Singapore had to put a temporary moratorium on new data center builds a few years ago because they were worried about land scarcity and the strain on their energy grid. Amsterdam also put freezes on permits due to community concerns about noise, power, and land use. Sound familiar?
Very familiar. The Loudoun story playing out elsewhere.
Exactly. But even with those major global hubs, Northern Virginia's total data center capacity is estimated to be larger than the next 4 or 5 largest international markets combined.
Wow. Combined. By some metrics, Northern Virginia alone accounts for something like 13% of all global data center capacity. Just dominant. Globally, Loudoun, as the core of Novia, is king.
So where does Loudoun truly lead, and maybe where does it lag now?
It clearly leads an overall scale in the density of network connectivity. That interconnection factor is huge, and just market maturity. It's been the biggest for so long. The ecosystem is incredibly deep. It really functions as the primary internet exchange point for North America.
Any areas where others might have an edge?
While some other hubs might excel in niche areas, you see places in Scandinavia like Sweden or Norway promoting green data centers powered by abundant hydropower in naturally cold climates, which helps a lot with cooling costs and sustainability.
In terms of lagging, well, as we've seen, Loudoun is starting to run short on easily developable land in the most desirable areas, and community tolerance for massive new projects has definitely decreased.
So the very factors that fueled its growth available land, easy approvals are becoming constraints. Increasingly, yes. That's why you see data center developers now looking more seriously at adjacent counties in Virginia, or even other states in the region, trying to replicate some of Loudoun's success elsewhere. The growth is spilling over because Loudoun itself, despite its pragmatic approach for years, eventually had to tap the brakes when the power grid and the residents felt the strain.
So the final verdict is, Northern Virginia, powered by Loudoun, is the undisputed champ. Others are growing, competition is increasing, but that early mover advantage and the sheer scale mean it's likely to hold the crown for the foreseeable future.
I think that's fair to say. It's hard to imagine any single market catching up anytime soon, even if the growth rate here moderates a bit.
So let's bring this all together. What does this story of Loudoun County, this deep dive into Data Center Alley, really mean for you, our listener? It's just a remarkable story, isn't it? How foresight, geography, and this explosion in technology transformed what was mostly pasture land into a global digital metropolis.
It really is. And it handles these just unimaginable volumes of data every single second, keeping our modern world humming along.
But it's a story with two sides now, right? Huge opportunities still, but also growing caution.
Absolutely. The billions still being invested by Amazon, Microsoft, Google, they signal that the demand for cloud computing for digital services is still skyrocketing, especially now with AI needing so much power, plus 5G rolling out, edge computing. The demand isn't slowing down. But, as we've discussed, the county and the whole region is now seriously grappling with how to make that growth sustainable, how to make it fit better with the community. Power constraints, land use conflicts, water use, environmental impact. These aren't side notes anymore. They're front-page news in Loudoun.
And I think this deep dive really underscores the physical reality behind our increasingly digital lives. We talk about the cloud like it's this abstract thing, but it's not. Every time you send an email, join a video call, save a photo, Loudoun County might literally be doing the heavy lifting. Understanding that places like Data Center Alley exist, filled with real hardware, roaring fans, needing massive power and water, it demystifies the cloud. It's not magic.
Not at all. It's huge buildings, complex engineering, run by dedicated people, and sometimes guarded by robots, apparently in very real communities like Loudoun.
And it highlights the trade-offs, doesn't it? We all want instant, unlimited access to everything online 24/7. But that demand requires this colossal physical infrastructure with significant resource appetites.
Exactly. And Loudoun's experience really drives home how crucial it is to tackle those trade-offs head-on. Investing in green energy isn't just nice to have, it's becoming essential. Designing more efficient buildings, finding smarter ways to cool servers, recycling water, implementing policies that ensure this tech growth doesn't just steamroll local quality of life. These are the challenges Loudoun is facing, and they're the challenges the whole world needs to figure out as our digital dependence grows.
So maybe the next time you watch a quick YouTube clip or back up your phone photos to the cloud, take just a second to think about the journey that data takes, and maybe appreciate the unlikely hero making a lot of it possible. A county in Virginia that turned its fields into the backbone of the digital age. Loudoun's ongoing effort to keep the internet's engine running smoothly without burning out its own community or environment is going to be a really important story to watch.
Pretty incredible, right?
Well, that's a wrap of this episode of the Bots and Bosses podcast. Enjoyed the show? Don't just listen. Follow the Boss and Bosses podcast and connect with John Binks online. Remember, the bots are getting smarter, but you're still the boss. For now, see you next time.